My sister sold my late mother's house behind my back. I bought it back before she got the money. I stood at the front gate of my mother's house with flowers wilting in my hands and my heart pounding like I'd run there. A bright red for sale sign swung from the fence, squeaking in the wind. I stared at it, confused, then angry, then sick. This was not just a house. This was where my mother laughed loud and loved hard. She had been gone only 6 weeks. The will had not even been read yet. I dropped the flowers on the porch steps and pushed the gate open. The lock had been changed. My key no longer worked. I pressed my forehead to the cold metal and breathed through the pain. Then I heard voices inside. Strangers. Laughing. Walking through my mother's living room like it was a store. I stepped back as a woman in heels opened the door and smiled at me like I was a problem she could handle. That was the moment I knew something terrible had already happened. If you want to see how this betrayal ends, hit subscribe for more revenge stories. The woman stepped outside and held out her hand like we were meeting at a party. She said she was the realtor and spoke fast, cheerful, and calm. Her smile did not reach her eyes. I told her this was my mother's house and asked why strangers were inside. She blinked once, then said, "Oh, the seller's sister gave permission." My ears rang. I asked her to repeat it. She did, slower this time like I was hard of hearing. "Your sister signed off. Everything is legal." My knees went weak. My sister. Elaine. I had not spoken to her in days. Not since the funeral, when she said grief was useless. I walked past the realtor and into the house. Furniture was already moved. Mom's photo was gone from the wall. The smell of lemon cleaner filled the air, wiping her away. I asked where my sister was. The realtor said she had already left and that I should speak to a lawyer if I had concerns. That word, concerns, felt like a slap. I drove straight to the courthouse, my hands shaking on the wheel. I kept thinking there had to be a mistake. Elaine was careless, yes, but not cruel. Not like this. At the records office, a clerk slid a folder across the counter. Inside were copies of documents with my sister's name signed clear and bold. She had listed herself as co-owner. My heart dropped so fast it felt like falling through a hole. Our mother's will had not been read. Probate was not finished. None of this should have happened. Yet there it was in black ink. I asked how this was possible. The clerk shrugged and said families fight over houses every day. I left the building in a daze and sat in my car, staring at the papers. Elaine had moved fast. Too fast. I felt small and stupid for trusting her. I had stayed in another state for years, caring for my own family, sending money home, calling Mom every night. Elaine stayed close, and now she was using that closeness like a knife. I called Elaine from the parking lot. She answered on the third ring, cheerful and light, like nothing was wrong. I asked her what she had done. She laughed, a short, sharp sound that made my chest hurt. She said I was being dramatic. She said Mom would want her to move on, and that houses were just things. I told her she sold our mother's home behind my back. She said I was too sentimental, and that I did not even live there anymore. I asked how she could sign papers before the will was read. She said she had taken care of it. When I told her it was wrong, she snapped that life did not wait for grief. Then she said something I will never forget. She said, "You always hold on too tight, Tonia. I'm freeing us." I hung up shaking. That was when anger finally cut through the shock. This was not carelessness. This was choice. And she had made it without me. The will was read 3 days later in a small office that smelled like old books and dust. I sat stiff in a hard chair while the lawyer spoke in a calm, even voice. He confirmed what I already knew in my bones. The house was left to both of us. Not Elaine alone. Both. My stomach twisted. I asked about the sale. His face tightened. He said Elaine had already accepted a down payment from a buyer. That money was not hers to take. Elaine argued, her voice loud and sharp, saying I did not deserve half since I left town years ago. I looked at her and saw someone I barely knew. The lawyer raised his hand and said the sale was not final yet. That word, yet, sparked something inside me. When we stepped outside, Elaine hissed that I'd better not make trouble. I whispered back that she already had. She stormed off, confident and smug. She thought she had won. She had no idea this was only the beginning. That night, Elaine came to my hotel room, uninvited. She stood in the doorway like she owned the place, arms crossed, eyes hard. She said we needed to talk like adults. I told her adults did not steal from family. She laughed again and said I was acting like a victim. She shouted that I left town years ago, that I built a life somewhere else, and that I had no right to claim a house I did not live in. I whispered back that neither did she. The room went quiet. Her face twisted with anger. She said Mom had depended on her, that she had paid bills, cleaned floors, done the real work. I reminded her that Mom called me every night and cried when Elaine ignored her. Elaine slammed her hand on the table and told me to stop rewriting the past. I realized then we were not arguing facts. We were fighting over who mattered more to a woman who was no longer here to defend herself. 2 days later, I asked the realtor for the buyer's name. She hesitated but finally told me, Mr. Holt. I called him that afternoon, my voice calm even though my hands shook. He agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the house. He was quiet, polite, and older than I expected. He said Elaine had seemed eager, almost rushed. She pushed for a fast close and brushed off questions about probate. He told me something fell off, but the paperwork looked clean. I showed him a copy of a will. His face changed. He leaned back and rubbed his chin. He said he did not want trouble and that he trusted sellers to be honest. I told him the truth, that the house belonged to both sisters and that the sale was not settled. He sighed and said he needed time to think. When he left, I sat alone with my coffee going cold, knowing Elaine had gambled with something she did not fully own. That evening, I checked our old shared bank records with help from the lawyer. My chest tightened as I read the statement. Elaine had already spent the deposit. Every dollar. She had bought a new car, shiny and red, like she was celebrating. I clenched my fists until my nails hurt. That money was not hers. It belonged to an estate that was still open. I realized then how deep this went. This was not just greed. This was panic dressed as confidence. Elaine needed the money now. She always had. She never planned ahead. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel the anger fully for the first time. It burned hot but clear. I was done asking nicely. I was done hoping she would come to her senses. If she wanted to play this game fast and loose, I would slow it down. Carefully. Legally. And completely. The lawyer listened closely as I laid everything out. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he leaned back and folded his hands. He said, until the sale finalizes, you still have leverage. Those words settled into me like a promise. He explained that shared inheritance meant Elaine could not sell without my full consent. He said timing mattered and that I had to act fast. I asked him what fast looked like. He smiled slightly and said sometimes the best move was to let someone believe they were winning. That made my stomach flip. I trusted him anyway. He told me not to confront Elaine again, not yet. Let her grow comfortable. Let her feel safe. I nodded, even though every part of me wanted to scream. As I left his office, I felt something new beside the anger. Control. For the first time since seeing that sign on the gate, I was no longer reacting. I was planning. That night, I went back to the house alone. The realtor was gone. The lights were off. I walked through rooms filled with echoes. In Mom's bedroom, I found her Bible on the nightstand. I had not touched it since the funeral. When I opened it, a folded paper slipped out. My hands trembled as I read her handwriting. It said, "Keep the house. It's where our memories live." I pressed the note to my chest and cried for the first time since all this began. She knew. Somehow, she knew this place would need protecting. I tucked the note into my purse like armor. This was no longer just about money or fairness. This was about honoring the one person who never made me feel like I had to fight to belong. I locked the door behind me and walked away with purpose. I drove past the house late that night, slower than I needed to. Lights were on inside. Strangers moved from room to room, pointing, talking, judging. My throat burned as I watched someone stand in my mother's kitchen, the place where she taught me how to make soup when I was 9. I parked across the street and sat there gripping the wheel. I felt like a ghost watching my own life being auctioned off. The curtains were open, like nothing was private anymore. I wondered if Elaine felt this at all, or if she slept easy knowing she had already spent money that was not hers. I did not cry. I memorized every detail instead. The porch rail, the front window, the way the oak tree leaned just slightly left. This was not goodbye. This was a promise. I started the car and drove away, my jaw tight, my mind sharp. If Elaine thought I would fade quietly, she had never really known me. I confronted Elaine again the next morning because anger sometimes needs air. I met her at a diner near the courthouse. She arrived late, wearing sunglasses inside, keys to her new car loud in her hand. I told her she sold Mom's soul for a car. She did not flinch. She said it was just wood and walls. I asked her if she remembered Mom reading on the porch every Sunday. She rolled her eyes and said memories did not pay bills. People stared. She did not care. She said I was dragging things out because I liked drama. I leaned forward and told her she was wrong. I told her she sold something she did not fully own. Her smile faded for half a second, then returned harder. She told me I was too late and that the deal was basically done. I paid my bill, stood up, and said quietly, "We'll see." She laughed as I walked out. That laugh followed me all the way to the car. That afternoon, Mr. Holt called me. His voice sounded unsure. He said Elaine was pushing to close before the appraisal. He said she wanted things done fast, no delays, no questions. I told him that rushing a sale often meant someone was hiding something. He went quiet. He admitted he felt pressured and uncomfortable. I reminded him that once money changed hands, problems followed buyers too. He asked what I would do if the sale stopped. I said I just wanted what was fair. I did not tell him my full plan. I did not need to. Doubt had already done half my work. When the call ended, I felt a strange calm. Elaine had moved so fast, she left tracks everywhere. All I had to do was follow them. I called my lawyer and told him the buyer was nervous. He chuckled softly and said, "Good. That gives us room." I stared out the window and imagined Elaine pacing, confident, unaware the ground under her was starting to shift. The lawyer laid it out simply. He said the best revenge was patience mixed with timing. He said we would let Elaine think she had won, let her brag, let her relax. Then we would move. He explained how a proxy buyer could make an offer without revealing who stood behind it. He told me not to react when Elaine pushed or bragged. Silence would make her careless. I agreed, even though staying quiet felt like swallowing fire. That night, Elaine posted photos online with her new car, smiling wide. People commented congratulations. I said nothing. I saved screenshots. I waited. Every post, every brag, was proof of what she had done. I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because things were fixed, but because I finally trusted myself. I was not the younger sister anymore. I was a woman who had buried her mother and would not let her memory be traded for leather seats and chrome. We filed the offer 2 days later. Anonymous. Clean. Slightly higher than Elaine's deal. My name was nowhere near it. The lawyer handled everything through his associate. I sat at my kitchen table refreshing my email like it was holding my breath. When the message came, my hands shook. The realtor wrote that there was another bidder and that Elaine's buyer might lose the house. I pictured Elaine reading it, her confidence cracking. I did not celebrate. Not yet. This was only the opening move. I reminded myself to stay quiet, to stay invisible. That evening, Elaine called me 3 times. I let it ring. She texted that we needed to talk. I did not answer. I sat with Mom's note in my lap and whispered that I was keeping the house, just like she asked. Elaine thought this was about money. She was wrong. This was about respect, and she was about to learn how expensive disrespect could be. The next morning, Elaine's realtor sent her an email that sounded cheerful but sharp. The subject line alone did the damage. You've been outbid. I did not see her face, but I imagined it clearly. Elaine called me within minutes, her voice tight and angry. She demanded to know if I was behind it. I told her calmly that I had no idea what she was talking about. That only made her louder. She said some mystery buyer was trying to steal her deal. I reminded her the house was not hers alone. She hung up on me. By afternoon, word had spread. Friends messaged me asking what was happening. I stayed quiet. That silence worked better than any argument. Elaine began posting online again, vague and dramatic, talking about betrayal and snakes. I saved everything. I could feel her panic growing. And right when the pressure peaked, hit subscribe for more revenge stories, because this was only the setup. Elaine tried to cancel her buyer's deal that same day. She wanted the higher price. She wanted out. But contracts are stubborn things. Her agreement with Mr. Holt forbade her from backing out without serious penalties. She called him anyway. He told her no. Firm and final. She screamed, according to him. When he called me later, he sounded tired. He said he felt trapped between family drama and legal trouble. I told him I understood, and that none of this should have been his problem. That honesty shifted something. He admitted he was glad someone was finally slowing things down. Elaine, meanwhile, was unraveling. She sent me long texts about how I was ruining her life. I read them once and deleted them. She had ruined her own life the moment she signed papers she did not have the right to sign. I stayed focused. The clock was ticking, and every tick worked in my favor. That night, Elaine showed up at my door without warning. Her eyes were red. Her voice shook. She said she would lose everything if the sale fell through. She said the car payments were due. She said I had to help her. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, she waited like a child expecting comfort. I gave her silence instead. She asked if I even cared. I told her I cared about what was right. She dropped her head into her hands and cried. Real tears this time. I did not move. This was not cruelty. This was consequence. She begged me to talk to the lawyer, to fix it. I said nothing. After a long moment, she stood up and left without looking back. I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. I felt heavy, but steady. I was not enjoying this. I was enduring it. There was a difference. 2 days later, Elaine asked to meet again. This time she was calm, almost polite. We sat in a quiet office. She slid papers across the table and asked me to sign a waiver releasing her from any legal dispute. She promised to pay me later. I stared at the papers, then at her face. I told her I would think about it. Relief flashed across her eyes. She thought she had me. She did not know the proxy buyer was already moving forward. I folded the papers carefully and placed them in my bag. I left without promising anything. That evening, my lawyer confirmed the timing was perfect. Everything was lining up. Elaine was desperate enough to make mistakes. I slept that night with Mom's note under my pillow, knowing the truth was close. Very close. The proxy buyer signed the deal the next morning. My lawyer's associate shook hands, smiled, and kept my name out of it. The house was officially sold. Elaine celebrated online within minutes. She posted that she was finally free. I watched quietly, knowing the full payment had not cleared yet. Escrow takes time. Time she no longer had. She texted me a smiley face and said things were finally working out. I did not reply. I made tea and sat by the window. The trap was set. Elaine thought she had escaped. She had no idea she had just handed the house back to the one person she tried to cut out. I closed my eyes and let myself feel the calm before the storm. The real reckoning was about to begin. Elaine celebrated loudly. She posted photos of wine glasses and captions about fresh starts. Friends cheered her on, unaware the money had not reached her account yet. I watched from a distance, calm and quiet. My lawyer called to confirm escrow had placed a temporary hold on the wire for verification. That small delay mattered more than she knew. I imagined her checking her bank app again and again, waiting for numbers to change. Meanwhile, the house keys changed hands. The proxy buyer received them, signed the final documents, and walked out as the legal owner. That owner was me. I did not drive there yet. I let the truth sit where it was, growing heavier by the hour. Elaine texted me again, saying things were finally over and we could heal. I deleted it. Healing does not begin with lies. It begins with truth, and the truth was almost ready to step into the light. The wire transfer stalled longer than Elaine expected. She called the bank twice that day. They told her it was under routine review. Routine. That word probably made her scream. My lawyer had arranged it carefully, citing possible seller misrepresentation. Nothing false. Nothing rushed. Just enough to stop the money from landing. Elaine texted me late that night, asking if I knew anything. I said no. That answer was true in the simplest way. I did not know what she thought I knew. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The next morning, the lawyer called again. He said everything was moving exactly as planned. I thanked him and hung up. I made breakfast and ate slowly, savoring the quiet. Elaine was learning what it felt like to wait without control. She had never been good at that. Neither had I once. But I was better now. The keys officially changed hands on a Friday afternoon. Elaine still believed the buyer was a stranger. She still believed the money was coming. I drove to the house that evening and parked out front. For a moment, I sat in the car breathing, steadying myself. Then I walked up the steps and unlocked the door with my own key. The house was empty and quiet. No strangers. No signs. Just echoes. I walked through every room slowly, touching door frames, windowsills, the kitchen counter where Mom used to rest her hand. This place felt different now. Safe. Mine. Elaine had no idea. She texted me again that night, asking if she could stop by one last time to say goodbye. I agreed. I told her to come the next afternoon. I did not explain why. I sat on the porch after dark, listening to the wind move through the trees, waiting. Elaine arrived the next day nervous, but hopeful. She said she wanted closure. I told her I understood. I let her talk as she walked through the house, remembering things only when it suited her. She stood in the living room and said it felt strange knowing it was no longer ours. I said nothing. When she asked where the new owners were, I told her they would not be coming. She laughed, confused, then uneasy. She asked what I meant. I told her to sit down. She refused. Her eyes darted around the room like it might explain itself. I walked to the hallway and picked up the folder I had placed on the table earlier. My heart was calm. My voice was steady. Everything I had endured led to this moment. The air felt thick, waiting. Elaine opened her mouth to speak again. I raised my hand gently. Just listen, I said. The truth was ready. I stood across from her and said softly, "Welcome home." She frowned. I added, or I should say, "Welcome to my home." Her face drained of color. She laughed once, sharp and confused, and said I was not funny. I opened the folder and laid the papers out on the table. The final sale documents. The buyer's name. Mine. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the chair. She screamed that I tricked her. I told her she signed everything herself. I reminded her she rushed, lied, and spent money that was not hers. She shook her head over and over like the truth might fall away. I told her the bank had frozen her payment due to misrepresentation. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. This was not revenge screamed or thrown. It was quiet. Final. Hit subscribe for more revenge stories, because justice always finds its way home. Elaine screamed that I had tricked her, that I had planned this from the start. Her voice cracked as she waved her hands at the papers like they were poison. I stayed calm. I told her I did not trick her. I followed the law. I reminded her she signed documents she did not fully understand because she wanted money fast. I pointed to her signature, bold and clear. I told her she sold something she only half owned and ignored every warning along the way. She sank into the chair and cried hard, ugly sobs that shook her shoulders. I did not comfort her. I told her this was the result of her choices, not my cruelty. She yelled that families should forgive. I answered that family should not steal. That stopped her cold. She looked up at me like she was finally seeing me. Not the sister who backed down. Not the one who lived far away. But the one who stood her ground. The room felt still, like the house itself was listening. Elaine grabbed her phone and called the bank in front of me. I watched her face change as the call went on. First confusion, then fear, then disbelief. She was told her payment was frozen pending investigation for seller misrepresentation. She dropped the phone into her lap and stared at the wall. I explained gently that selling shared property without consent had consequences. She whispered that she needed that money. I reminded her she had already spent it. That part hurt her the most. She asked if I could fix it. I said no. I told her this was bigger than me now. Lawyers were involved. Records were filed. Truth had weight. She stood up suddenly and accused me of ruining her life. I told her she ruined it when she chose greed over honesty. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The house fell silent again. I sat down slowly, breathing deep. Justice was not loud. It was heavy and unavoidable. 2 days later, my lawyer served Elaine with formal notice. Fraudulent sale under shared inheritance rights. Civil consequences pending. She called me screaming, then crying, then begging. I did not answer. I forwarded everything to the lawyer. The paper trail was clean and clear. She had no defense left. Family members began calling me, confused and upset. I told them the truth. Slowly the story spread. Screenshots, dates, signatures. Lies fall apart when light touches them. Elaine tried to spin it, saying I was vindictive. But facts do not bend for feelings. That evening, I sat in the living room and opened the windows. Fresh air filled the house. I felt tired, but steady. This was not about winning. It was about setting things right. Elaine had tried to erase me from my own family story. Instead, she had written herself into a lesson she would never forget. The family group chat exploded that weekend. Messages flew back and forth, angry and shocked. When I shared the timeline, the tone changed. One by one, people sided with me. They saw the rushed sale, the missing consent, the spent deposit. Elaine left the chat without a word. Her silence said everything. An aunt called me and apologized for doubting me. A cousin said Mom would be proud. I sat quietly, letting the noise pass. That afternoon, a police officer visited Elaine's apartment to deliver paperwork related to civil misrepresentation. I was told later, she could not stop crying. I did not feel joy hearing that. I felt closure forming. Some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Elaine had crossed them all. I stood on the porch that evening, watching the sun dip low, knowing the worst was over. The reckoning had arrived. Elaine's new car was repossessed that same week. The payment bounced when the frozen funds never cleared. Neighbors watched as it was towed away. She texted me that night, saying I took everything from her. I typed back only one sentence. You sold it. Then I turned my phone off. This was the end of the storm. The justice part was done. What came next would be quieter, slower, and cleaner. I walked through the house and opened every window. The walls felt lighter. Mom's house was safe. Not because I fought loudly, but because I stayed firm. Elaine had tried to build a future on lies. I rebuilt something stronger on truth. The difference mattered. Elaine moved into a small rental on the edge of town. I heard about it from an aunt who felt sorry for her. She said the place was cramped and dark, nothing like the house Mom loved. Elaine texted me late one night, saying I had taken everything from her. I stared at the message for a long time before answering. I typed, "You took it first." Then I set my phone down. I did not block her, but I stopped responding. There was nothing left to explain. The house was quiet now, and the quiet felt earned. I began sorting through Mom's things slowly, with care. Old photos, recipes, letters. I kept what mattered and let go of what didn't. Each small choice felt like reclaiming something Elaine tried to rush past. I realized I was no longer angry. I was grounded. This was not about punishment anymore. It was about repair. And that kind of work takes time, patience, and honesty, things Elaine never wanted to give. I started the renovations in early spring. Nothing fancy. Fresh paint. Fixed steps. New light where the rooms felt dim. I kept the floors the same, because Mom loved how they creaked. Every change felt like healing instead of erasing. Neighbors stopped by with stories about Mom. They thanked me for saving the house. I smiled and said it was always meant to stay. Elaine did not come by. I did not invite her. One afternoon, she texted again, saying I enjoyed ruining her life. I did not answer. I was busy restoring something real. Each nail hammered felt like closure. Each clean wall felt like peace. I slept better. I laughed more. The weight I carried since the funeral finally eased. Elaine's absence no longer hurt. It clarified. Some people choose themselves over family. Others choose integrity. I knew which one I was. And I knew Mom would have too. When the house was finished, I turned the spare room into a small reading space for neighborhood kids. Mom loved books. She believed stories made people kinder. I donated shelves, rugs, and a little desk. I named it after her. Parents thanked me. Children laughed inside those walls again. That mattered more than any apology Elaine could offer. I felt proud in a quiet way. Not loud pride. The kind that sits easy in your chest. I mailed Elaine one letter telling her what I had done. I did not accuse or insult. I simply said the house was safe and serving others. She never replied. That was fine. I was no longer waiting. Justice had already happened. This was something better. This was legacy. I sat on the porch that evening and watched the sun set, thinking about how love outlives greed every time if someone is brave enough to protect it. Months later, Elaine called me. Her voice was small, unsure. She said she was sorry. She said she thought she deserved more. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I spoke gently. I told her she already had more. She had me. She went quiet. I did not offer to fix things or reopen old wounds. Some breaks do not mend the same way. We said goodbye without anger. After the call, I wrote her a letter I never sent. I wrote that family is not measured in property or money, but in integrity. I folded it and placed it in a drawer. Not everything needs to be delivered to be true. I felt free. Truly free. The house stood strong behind me. I stood stronger within myself. On the anniversary of Mom's passing, I sat on the porch swing she loved. The air was warm. The house was quiet and full at the same time. I whispered, "It's safe now." Neighbors still talked about how the rightful owner outsmarted a greedy sibling. I never corrected them. Let stories be stories. I hung a small wooden plaque by the front door that read, "The Lewis home, built on love, not lies." Every time I turned the key, I remembered what Elaine tried to take and what I chose to protect. She sold the house once for greed. I bought it back for peace. Some inheritances can't be stolen. They live in the choices we make when it matters most. Life grew quiet in a good way after that. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own thoughts without fear. I kept busy with small routines. Morning coffee on the porch. Evening walks past the oak tree. I stopped jumping when my phone buzzed. Elaine did not call again. I heard she was struggling, working 2 jobs, trying to rebuild. I felt no joy in that. Only distance. I had learned something hard and honest. Love does not mean saving someone from the results of their choices. Sometimes love means stepping back. I framed Mom's handwritten note and placed it by the front door. Every time I read it, I felt steady. This house was not a prize. It was a promise kept. I had honored her wishes when it mattered most. That mattered to me more than revenge ever could. The anger that once burned in my chest had faded, leaving something stronger behind. Respect for myself. And that respect felt permanent. On warm afternoons, neighbors stopped to chat as I watered the plants. They asked how I managed to keep the house. I smiled and said it stayed because it was loved. Some nodded like they understood more than I said. I spent time in the reading room, watching kids curl up with books, their laughter filling spaces once heavy with tension. That sound healed something deep inside me. I realized I no longer replayed arguments in my head. No more late night wondering if I should have done things differently. I had done what was right, even when it hurt. Elaine had chosen speed and selfishness. I chose patience and truth. The results spoke for themselves. At night, I slept without regret. The house creaked the way it always had, familiar and comforting. I belonged here again, not because I fought harder, but because I stayed honest. That was the victory no one could take from me. People still whispered about the story. How one sister tried to sell what was not hers. How the other quietly took it back. I never corrected them. Stories grow their own legs. What mattered was how I felt standing in my kitchen, stirring soup, humming without thinking. I felt whole. Elaine became part of the past, not a wound, just a chapter. I wished her no harm, but I no longer wished her close. Boundaries had become my peace. I learned that justice does not always shout. Sometimes it arrives like a door closing gently behind you. I had stepped into a life that felt like mine again. The house held memories, but it did not trap me in them. It held me steady while I moved forward. That balance was everything. I was no longer reacting to betrayal. I was living beyond it. And that felt like freedom. One quiet morning, I hung the wooden plaque by the front door. The Lewis home. Built on love, not lies. I stepped back and read it twice. It felt right. The house no longer felt like something I had to defend. It felt settled in the best way. Rooted. Honest. I thought about all the moments that led here. The locked gate. The lies. The waiting. The reveal. Every step had shaped me. I was not the same woman who stood shaking in front of that for sale sign. I was stronger, clearer, and less afraid to stand alone. I had learned that peace is not passive. It is earned through hard choices. I opened the door and let the light pour in. The house welcomed it.
So did I.
Elaine sold the house once for greed. I bought it back for peace. That truth stayed with me every time I turned the key. Some inheritances are not written in wills or counted in money. They are carried in courage, patience, and self-respect. I kept the house, but more importantly, I kept myself. I did not win by taking from her. I won by refusing to lose who I was. When I sat on the porch at night, wrapped in quiet, I felt something close to gratitude. Not for the pain, but for what it taught me. Betrayal showed me my strength. Justice showed me my worth. And peace showed me where I truly belonged. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe for more powerful revenge stories, and tell me in the comments what part hit you the hardest.